in order for us to wake up, some of us need a wake-up call. And when I was in my 20s, I got run over by a truck in a triathlon and broke 6 vertebrae in my back and was told I'd never walk again. And so that was a defining moment for me because I was weighing what I knew against what I didn't know. And the recommendation was a radical surgery where they put in stainless steel rods. And in my case, it would be from the base of my neck to the base of my spine to stabilize the compression fractures. So I had 4 opinions from 4 of the leading surgeons in Southern California, and they all said, Harrington rod surgery, or never walk again. And I decided against the surgery, Shawn, because I was in my 20s and I just couldn't imagine living on addictive medication or just being restricted in some way. So I thought I had nothing to lose, So I just had this idea that there's a principle that says that power that made the body heals the body. And so I wasn't going anywhere, I wasn't doing anything. And I thought if I could connect with this intelligence that's giving us life and begin to give it a plan or an instruction, to give it some template. And then when I was pleased with the design, then surrender that idea to a greater mind, because I couldn't do the healing. Something innate in me would do that healing. And it worked. And I was back on my feet in about 10 and a half weeks and back into my life at 12 weeks. And then I started getting curious, like, what happened? I mean, how did all this change? And so you won't find those answers in conventional textbooks. You got to start looking outside the box, and looking at neuroplasticity and epigenetics and psychoneuroimmunology and electromagnetism and the quantum theory of reality. And so it started me on this journey to really just see, well, if it worked for me, is it possible that it works for other people? So I started studying spontaneous remissions and interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the world that were treating conventionally and non-conventionally. They were staying the same, and then they got worse. And then all of a sudden, they did something, and they all of a sudden started to improve. And I wanted to know what the cause was that was producing that effect. And so I started doing the research, wrote a book, and then was in What the Bleep, and then I noticed there was a shift after What the Bleep, and what I noticed was that people were asking how. How do you do it? And I think that's a really important question, because I think this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. Yeah. And how is it going to affect us? How is it going to affect your life? How is it going to affect my life? What am I going to do with this information? And so we started teaching workshops and teaching people how to change their brainwaves, and what is meditation, and do thoughts really become things, and what are those principles? And we started seeing people starting to heal. We started seeing people creating better jobs, better opportunities, more wealth. And then we started seeing people having really profoundly mystical experiences, transcendental moments. And we started doing a lot of research. We brought in a team of scientists and researchers. And my interest is to demystify that process, that we can reproduce it. And probably in the last 10 years, we have made such great strides. And we now know there's a formula. Just on all the research that we've done, that we can teach people how to begin to change their mind and really begin to produce an effect in their body, and then ultimately create change in their life. And wow, what a great time to be alive.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that so much. And I think this is a good segue, because talking about the mind and changing our mind in order to change what's happening with our bodies, our thoughts really do create our biology. But one of the things I've heard you say is that our biology is redundant. So Can you talk a little bit about that? How's our thoughts create our biology?
Well, if you think about it, I mean, it's really common sense. I mean, some of the research shows that, 90% of the thoughts that we think on a daily basis are the same thoughts as the day before. So if you think that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, and 90% of your thoughts are the same known thoughts that you're always thinking, then your life should stay the same. Yeah. Because the same thoughts lead to the same choices. The same choices lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the same experiences. The same experiences produce the same emotions. Those same emotions tend to influence the way we think. And our biology, our neurocircuitry, our neurochemistry, our hormones, and even our gene expression is equal to how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. So then it makes sense then if you want to create a new personal reality, a new life, you're going to have to change your personality. And you got to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. You got to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors, even how you speak. Then you have to look at the emotions that you live by every single day and decide, do these emotions belong in my future? So many people try to create a new life as the same person.
Right.
In order to create a new personal reality, you got to change your personality. So the principle in neuroscience says that nerve cells that fire together wire together, thinking the same way, making the same choices, demonstrating the same actions, creating the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the same patterns, all for the familiar feeling called you. And you do that for 10 years in a row. Well, you're going to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature because you're firing and wiring that way. And that box in the brain, that becomes our personality, becomes our identity. And by the time we're 35 years old, for the most part, we've done something so many times that the body now knows how to do it as well as the mind, and that's a habit. So we have these unconscious programs of behaviors, automatic habits, redundant emotional reactions, hardwired beliefs, perceptions, attitudes that function just like a computer program. You press go and it runs automatically. So then when it comes time to change, thinking positively is going to do nothing, because your body has been conditioned, for the most part, into a program in the past. So the thought never makes it to the body because the body's on a different program. So how do we begin to influence the body so that the thought actually produces some type of change? So think about it. If you think an unhappy thought, you're going to feel unhappy. Yeah. If you think you're a failure, you're going to feel like a failure. Once you feel like a failure, you're going to think you're a failure. And people get caught in these loops of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking. And that redundancy is a conditioning process, because all you need is an image or a picture or a thought and a feeling, a response, stimulus response. And so the people tend to condition their brain and body into the past. And so when it comes time to change, you got to leave that familiar territory. And any choice that you make, if you said, hey, I'm going to eat a better diet, I'm going to wake up early and work out, I'm going to do meditation, the moment you decide to do something differently, get ready, because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty. You're not going to be able to predict the next moment. That means you've left your known biology and you're stepping into the unknown. Now, theoretically, that sounds great, but if the body has been conditioned into a familiar feeling that's in the known, the moment you take it outside the familiarity, it wants to go back to where it's comfortable. So the body starts influencing the mind. And this is where people say, why don't you start your diet tomorrow? Oh, why don't you start working out this evening? You're really never going to change. You're too tired. You have a headache. This doesn't feel right. And this is where people talk themselves out of it, because if they respond to that thought leads to the same choice, which leads to the same behavior, creates the same experience, produces the same feeling. And then they say, this feels right. No, that feels familiar. So going from one state of mind and body to another state of mind and body, you got to cross a river. And the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. Now, once people understand that they're going to be uncomfortable, then the question is, what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors will you demonstrate in one day? And the act of closing your eyes and rehearsing who you're going to be when you open your eyes begins to install neurological hardware in your brain to look like you've already done it. Now the brain, which is typically a record of the past, now becomes a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, the hardware begins to become a software program and you start behaving differently. And then if you can teach your body emotionally what the future will feel like, that means then you're not going to wait for your wealth to feel abundant or your success to feel empowered or your new relationship to feel love. In fact, the moment you start feeling abundant, you're generating wealth. The moment you start embracing empowerment, you're stepping towards your success. The moment you're in love with yourself and you're in love with life, you start creating equals in your life. Now that's causing an effect in your life. So many people, they already know how to do this, but they usually wait for the worst thing to happen in their life before they get the wake-up call.
We think that when we want to get this new result, that we can just do it. We can just try. But what you're saying is you got to be ready, because a lot of hell's going to break loose once you try to change who you are. Mm-hmm. If you're not prepared by changing what you're thinking first.
Yeah. We've actually studied this on functional scans. Many times, when we're looking at a person's brain in real time, when they're going through some type of change or transformation, you see this massive amount of disorderliness going on in the brain. Like the person is really losing their mind. All the circuitry is coming unglued. There's all this cognitive dissonance taking place. That's the moment they want to quit. That's the moment they want to give up. That's the moment they don't believe in anything. They believe in themselves. That is the prime moment where change takes place right there, because that's the end. They're on the edge there. So it's important for people to understand that if you're going about living every single day in the familiar life that you're living in, and you don't have a vision of the future, then you'll continue to live in routine. And if you wake up every morning and you do the same thing as you did the day before, over time, your body's going to be on autopilot, and it's going to drag you into a predictable future based on what you did in the past. And many people lose their free will to a bunch of programs. So then when you sit down and you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, when you're in the program, you're unconscious, right? So the moment you become conscious of that thought, you're no longer the thought. You're observing the thought, and you begin to objectify your subjective self. You start pulling out of the unconscious program, and consciousness, awareness is the first step to do that. And so many people don't want to light a match in a dark place, because all of a sudden, when they decide to be defined by a vision of the future, they're stepping out of the known. You're going to hear, I can't. It's too hard. It's not going to work. What about this? And those are the thoughts that are standing in the way between that person and that vision. And it has to come up. And if a person has been in the habit of unconsciously complaining and making excuses and feeling sorry for themselves and judging other people, that's their habit. The moment they become conscious of it, now they're out of the bleachers and they're on the field, right? Because now you have to not let that thought slip by your awareness unnoticed. And then if you're living in guilt or suffering or pain or unhappiness, but you live that way every day and it just feels like you, and all of a sudden you become aware, oh my God, I've been guilty for the last 10 years. I didn't even know it. It just felt like me. You're starting to separate yourself from your biology. And so you have to go through the process of unlearning before you relearn. And that 95% of who we are, that is what's stopping us from stepping into a new future. So then if people then are waking up every single day, think about this, the brain is a record of the past. If you wake up every morning and you start thinking about your problems, and your problems are just memories that are etched in your brain that are connected to certain people and problems and certain objects and things in certain times and places, the moment you start remembering your problems, you're thinking in the past, right? Yeah. And if every one of those problems has an emotion associated with it, and you start feeling bad or unhappy, now your body's in the past. So thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of your body. And how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So most people then, they start their day in the familiar past. Then they get up and they run through a routine series of behaviors, and their body's now habituated on autopilot into a predictable future. That's the known. So the familiar past, the predictable future are both the known. There's only one place where the unknown exists, and that's the present moment. So then when you're creative, you got to be present. You got to pay attention to be creative, and that defies or it goes against the programming. And so then there has to be some type of waging of intention that's greater than those programs. And most people, they get uncomfortable. They'd rather just get on their cell phone or, turn on the TV and watch a football game or distract themselves from that feeling. But when people really make up their mind to change, they have to come up against those feelings, those habits, those hardwired attitudes. And it takes a great act of will. But when we do it, the side effect is we see changes not only in our health, but in our lives as well. And then we say, wow, that really worked. And now we're the example of truth. That's what makes it so cool.
Yeah. So the goal is to lose our minds.
You literally have to lose your mind and create a new one.
I've never thought about it like that. And that's powerful. I mean, and also it would seem like that from the outside world as well. Your friends, family, when you're working on changing who you are, obviously, it's one of the things people say, like you're losing your mind.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
You should take it as a compliment. You should tell them I'm losing the mind that I need to lose.
Yeah. Love that.
Because you don't leave everything.
Yeah.
You have certain skills certain good habits, certain ways that you execute, and you think you want to take that into your future.
Yeah.
But don't take your lack or your insecurity. Don't take your pain or your misery. That stays. Yeah. And if you can't think greater than how you feel in your life, then you're thinking in the past, and your life will stay the same. So teaching people how to break out of the biology of their hardwired programs, the biology of the conditioning emotionally of their body, the biology of their habituations is a process that requires a great amount of energy and awareness. But people are doing it, and they're doing it really successfully.
Yeah. So I love that analogy of lighting a match in a dark place. And when you said it, I thought about Lord of the Rings, like Gandalf. He like has a staff, and there's like all this darkness, and he lights it, and there's like unpleasant things around them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like creating this opportunity to see the stuff that's kind of hidden in our minds. And so when I started the process of meditation, and I've done shows just talking about the science behind meditation, the benefits, like just the stuff in the data, in the clinical evidence, it's phenomenal. But what I don't talk about often is that it's not necessarily easy, because like I kind of had to learn how to live my life again after I was awake to the fact that I was awake, in a sense. And just kind of pointing back to when we light that and we see some of these negative qualities, for example, like it wasn't the fact that all these bad things were happening around me. It was me. Yeah. Like I had these negative perceptions about life. I was living my life, like you talk about these patterns of personality traits. I believed that life was struggle. Like everything had to be hard. Like I couldn't just graduate from high school. I had to get kicked out of high school in order to graduate. I couldn't just graduate from college. I had to get kicked out first. You know, I couldn't just have the things I wanted. I had to go through all of this struggle. And so I would manifest more of that. And like, that was a thing that switched for me. I started to think differently that, you know what, if I fall in love with this process, like even the challenges are fun now.
Yeah.
You know,
that's how powerful we are. You could actually, like the story we tell ourselves is how we perceive the world. And so then when we create the difficulties in our life, it reaffirms the belief that life is hard, that it's really someone out there that's doing it to us, that it's a circumstance in the past that created this. Okay, let's take away the person that did it. Let's shoot him to the moon. Let's erase your past. Now, what are you going to do now? You still got to do something, right? You're still alive. And I say we already know how to do this. We already know how to do this. We're wired to be creators. We're wired to do this. The thing that stops us, for the most part, in doing it is really the hormones of stress, because living in stress constantly is living in survival, and living in survival is living in emergency. In an emergency, it's not a time to create. In an emergency, it's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to learn. It's not even a time to sit still. So most people then that are living in stress and living in survival, they can't believe in a future yet because it's not a time to create. So getting people to that point where they make up their mind, and they make up their mind enough to begin to think, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be something else. That awakening process typically happens when people reach their lowest denominator. They hit rock bottom, because then they can see themselves through the eyes of somebody else. You feel so altered, you're not returning any texts. You feel so altered, you don't want to go to dinner with your buddies. You feel so altered, you don't want to watch your favorite TV show. You're just disconnected. And that's when you start observing yourself. But my message is, why wait for that? I mean, you can learn and change in pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in joy and inspiration. If you're waking up every morning being defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past, and you get up and you're inspired from an elevated self now instead of a limited self, you could observe the old self from an elevated state instead of that diminished state. And people are doing that. So they are aware of those thoughts. And yes, it takes effort. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But just because you have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And when you start looking and observing those thoughts, I think you are like Gandalf, because Gandalf also said, you may not pass, when he meant like that kind of severity when it comes to how we make up our mind about things. That's the kind of energy or intention that begins to create the biggest volume of change in our life. And I've interviewed thousands of people in our work that have healed from really serious health conditions. And I would say about 90% of them, when I ask them, so what happened? The first thing they say all the time is, I just made up my mind. I just made up my mind I was going to do this.
Yeah.
And they made a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carried a level of energy that was greater than the hardwired programs in their brain and the emotional conditioning in their body. And the choice that they made caused their body to respond to a new mind. In fact, the choice they made became a moment that they would never forget. It was an event. And the stronger the emotion they felt, the more they paid attention to the choice. And in a sense, they were remembering their future. And the body emotionally was getting a sampling, a taste of the future. And they're aligned to that future. And that's when the body's healing began. That's when the miracle started, right in that moment. That's how powerful we really are. Now, what if you did that every day? What if you made up your mind every single day you weren't going to get up from your meditation until you were that person you wanted to be? Game on now. Because you'd have to do battle with all the things that are not consistent with it. And that's exactly how our brain works. So then, if you want to be wealthy, you can't feel lack. You want to be a master. You can't judge your coworker. You want to be like somebody great in history, then you better execute peace in every area of your life. That's the law. So you take the prayer out on the road now. You take the prayer, and you're the living example of the prayer. That's where it matters the most. And that's when people start getting suspicious and say, Shawn, man, did you change your medication? I mean, you're looking way too happy all of a sudden. Well, you're not relying on anything outside of you to bring you joy. You're overcoming yourself every day. And people say to me, well, why do you do your meditations in the morning? I always say, easy. Because if I can overcome myself at the beginning of the day, the rest of the day is easy.
Right.
Because that's the biggest mastery, right?
Absolutely.
Is the self. And so people are waking up to that. And, they enjoy the process of seeing when they make those type of changes, the feedback that's happening in their lives, the synchronicities, the opportunities, the coincidences, those serendipities that are starting to happen. And they're going, wow, I am powerful. Yeah. Hey, I am a creator. And nobody's excluded from the equation. That's what makes it so cool. So people that are really sick, really, really sick, that are healing, they'll tell you that when they go to the doctor and the doctor said, where's the stage 4 cancer? They'll tell the doctor it's in the old person. I'm somebody else. Well, how'd you do it? Well, I downregulated the genes for disease by overcoming these emotions and these behaviors and thoughts, and I upregulated the genes for health. The doctor kind of looks at him and was like, wow, because it is possible to do that. And we've actually measured it in our events. We know that in 4 days, you can really change your gene expression. Genes that help restore balance, for cancer cells and tumors. Genes that activate stem cells to repair the cells that are damaged. Genes for neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons in your brain. Genes for oxidative balance, for the microtubules, the cellular structure, and the replication of cells. These are all activated in 4 days by people thinking differently, making different choices, doing different things, having new experiences, feeling new emotions. Your genes actually change. And so we're not doomed by our genes. We're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of our lives. We are marvels of adaptability and change. So then what does it mean to change? Change means then to be greater than your body. Greater than the body that has been conditioned emotionally to be the mind. Greater than the body habituated into a predictable future. To be greater than the environment. To be greater than the conditions in your life. And if you're not being defined by a vision of the future and you wake up every morning, it makes total sense then when you see the same people and you go to the same places and you do the exact same thing at the exact same time. Now your personality is no longer creating your personal reality. Your personal reality is creating your personality because every person, every object, every thing, every place is mapped neurologically in your brain. And since you've experienced your boss, since you've experienced your coworker, since you've experienced your ex, the moment you've experienced them at some point, there's an emotion associated with them. So then all of a sudden people wake up and they're not aware of this, but their environment is influencing the way they think and the way they feel. So when things are going good, they feel good. When things are bad, they feel bad, which means they're victims to their environment. Why are you unhappy? Well, this person made me unhappy, which means unconsciously that person is actually controlling the way I feel and the way I think. Now I'm a victim to that circumstance. So to change then is to be greater than that environment. So then you would have to reprogram the way you'd think and the way you'd feel to no longer return back to the same state of being. Now that's the mastery, because it isn't just having a great meditation and then getting on the freeway and flipping everybody off or judging your coworker.
Right.
You just return back to the old self. You got to be able to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day. And if you can, get ready, because weird things are going to happen in your life. So the person who's starting to try it out in a curious way, like, let's just do the experiment. Let's just see if I change my energy, I change the way I think I feel, is there going to be some effect in my life? When they start seeing that, they're no longer like, oh, I got to go create my life today. They're actually excited to do it because they don't want the magic to end. They want to keep it going. Now, that's when it gets kind of cool, because this is when you start believing in yourself. And when you believe in yourself, you believe in possibilities, right? When you believe in possibilities, you got to believe in yourself. When you stop believing in possibilities, you can't believe in yourself. So people are waking up and going, wow, it doesn't matter your skin color, doesn't matter how rich you are, doesn't matter how healthy you are, it doesn't matter how young you are, how old you are, how in shape, out of shape. Not even if you've ever meditated before, it doesn't even matter. It's a formula. And you don't need 40 years of dedication to meditation to get it. You just got to understand the formula. And like playing ping pong or hitting a golf ball or dancing the salsa, you're going to figure it out sooner or later, and it's going to get easier and it's going to get fun. I assert that if you're not in the present moment, you're running a program, right? And paying attention is being present. And it's a skill just like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. And you know when someone's present with you in your life because they're paying attention to you. And you know when they're not present with you because they're not paying attention to you. So where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So if you have all of your attention in the present moment, you're conserving a lot of energy to create with. If I'm talking to you and you're thinking about where you're going to go for lunch and who you're going to go with and how you're going to get there, and I'm talking to you, you left the present moment and your attention went to some future. And your energy will go down and you won't be able to comprehend what I said. If you start thinking about what you should have said at the staff meeting 3 days ago, and I'm talking to you and your mind is back in the past, you're siphoning energy out of the present moment into the past. So people are constantly siphoning their energy into a familiar past or a predictable future because that's where their attention is. And the stronger the emotions that we feel to certain problems and conditions in our life, the more we pay attention to them. Right. So we give our power away to our ex. We give our power away to that big problem. And that's creative energy that we should be able to use to create a new future. So then when a person's sitting in a meditation and they're doing absolutely nothing, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and their body for the last 10 years has been going in traffic and getting angry and frustrated in traffic, and now they're sitting in a meditation at 8 o'clock in the morning, the body's going to say, hey, you're off schedule. I'm used to suffering and getting angry here. Yeah. So the body's going to start looking for that emotion, and it's going to start influencing the mind, and you're going to start getting images and memories just so you could feel that emotion. Like now the person's back in the past, but if they become aware that they're siphoning energy out of the present moment into the past, and they settle the body back down into the present moment, that's a victory. Yeah. And those victories add up. And you're telling the body in that moment that it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind, and that's a victory. And then people get frustrated and they say, I can't meditate. Oh, really? Well, actually, you're doing it right. That's actually what meditate. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And then all of a sudden the body says, well, it's 8:15 now. This is when you normally, go and get something to eat and you have your coffee and your body's starting to want to get up and do something. You become aware that your body wants to get up and move and you're in the meditation, and you tell your body, you bring it back to the present moment and you settle it back down. You are training the animal. That's a victory. Now you're executing a will that's greater than the program, because most people lose their free will to a program. Now you're telling the body, I'll tell you when we get up, not when you want to get up. You're not the mind, I'm the mind. And that's a victory. Now, we've done the research on this. If you keep doing this and you stay with it, sooner or later, the body's going to surrender to a new mind. And when that happens, Shawn, there's a liberation of energy. The body is freed from those habituations and those emotions. The body's going from particle to wave, from matter to energy. And all of a sudden you're dialing down the anger. You're dialing down the vigilance. And the body now is being conditioned to a new mind. That is the present moment. And when you're in that present moment, something really amazing happens. You forget about you. All of a sudden, you're not your face, you're not your culture, you're not your marital status, you're not your diet, you're not your past. You're basically just an awareness. You're in the unknown. And that is the perfect place to create from. So it turns out that when people do this properly, they heal themselves of anxiety. Why? Because they're no longer obsessing about some future. When they find the present moment, they heal from their depression because they're not a bit hopeless and powerless in their past. The body's conditioned now. And so then when they overcome themselves in their meditation and they step out into their life, they are more present. They can connect. They are more patient. They are more loving because they overcome the animal part of themselves. And the beauty behind that is that all of a sudden, you're not predictable. All of a sudden, something's different about Shawn. He's not, I'm noticing he's not behaving the same way. You're out of the known, right? You're in the unknown. And all of a sudden, people, it's no longer what you're saying to them. It's who you are. They're just kind of scratching their head going, hey, he looks like he's really happy. I want some of that. And now we're out of the philosophical, theoretical realm. We're in the practicum, which is where really the magic happens. So the eternal present moment, the sweet spot of the generous present moment is the place we create from. And when we're there, we disconnect from our bodies. We become nobody. We disconnect from people in our lives. We're not thinking about our ex or our boss. We are no one. We're not thinking about our cell phone, our computer. We are no thing. We are not thinking about where we live, where we work, where we sleep. We are nowhere. And we're not thinking about the predictable future and the familiar past. We're in no time. And when you're disconnecting or dissociating from everything known, you're in the unknown. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. And I just want to shout out everybody who's been working on themselves to experience some of this. I know a lot of people listening have touched many of these moments. And to know, I just want to give everybody a little bit of a heads up. If you haven't, when people say those things like you've changed, or maybe you forgot where you've come from, say thank you. Yeah. Because that means you're progressing. And I was going to ask you about this. Like, now that we understand that we are really a function of the personality that we've created, for me, immediately comes up, it can be scary to change the personality, the person that I am, that I know, that I'm comfortable with. And understand our personality is really a function of our behaviors and our patterns and things that we've been accustomed to. Changing that personality, again, it starts by having those little moments of victory, right? So I was going to ask you, like, how do we change all this? How do we change the way that we feel habitually? How do we change our habitual thoughts? It's just getting those, is that part of it with the meditation?
The word meditation means to become familiar with. That's exactly what that symbol means. Familiarization. So if you're sitting in your meditation and your brain is going, you can't quit, it's too hard, you're becoming familiar with those thoughts, that's a meditation. There's no such thing as a bad meditation. There's just overcoming yourself. You're sitting there and your body wants to get up and do things and check your email and check your texts, and you become aware that it's doing that, and you become familiar with that. You're in a meditation. If you're realizing that you're angry and frustrated and resentful and all you're doing is sitting there, that's in there. Now you're becoming familiar with that old self. That's a good thing. And if you start saying, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain, and you keep firing and wiring them, you're going to become familiar with those. You start reviewing who you're going to be when you open your eyes, and you keep reviewing it. You keep firing and wiring, it's going to become familiar to you. And if you trade resentment and impatience for gratitude and freedom and joy, and you start making those chemicals in your meditation every single day, I swear to you, you'll get familiar with that. So the process of change is unlearning and relearning. It is breaking the habit of the old self and reinventing a new self. And we use meditation as a way to change our brain and body to be different. Be greater than the environment, be greater than our emotions and habits, and be greater than the predictable future and the familiar past. So meditation is a way then to get us in the right state of mind and body. So when we present ourselves to the world, we're a better expression of it. And then practicing and staying aware your entire day so that you can actually master something about yourself. Now, what's the side effect of that? You're more in love with you because you overcame you. And as you overcome and you overcome and you keep overcoming, you're going to become somebody else. And so the beauty behind that is then your life begins to change in really mysterious and unusual ways. And people say, oh my God, I was so happy I forgot about my back pain or my neck pain, or I forgot about my food allergies or whatever people are dealing with. Something biologically shifts in them and they're freer. They're more whole. They're less separate. They feel more pleased and satisfied with themselves. And they really don't care what people think of them. And they really stop judging other people because they're not judging themselves any longer. So you could only talk around these concepts. You really have to really apply them to really begin to see the fruits of your efforts. But common people around the world are doing the uncommon because of it.
And I think it's important for us to realize, and I really want you to talk about this, that the possibility of that life that you want already exists.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a big thing for people to wrap their head around, because you'd have to step out of the classical physics of the Newtonian world, where we live in this realm of three-dimensional reality that we experience with our senses, and everything has height and depth and width, and we narrow our focus on the material world and we navigate in this way. And this realm has an infinite amount of space. Space is eternal. And we experience time as we move through space. So we move from one point of awareness, I'm here, the door's over there, that's another point of awareness. And as I move my body from one point of consciousness to another point of consciousness, as I move through space, I experience time. So if we're going to create matter to matter, three-dimensional reality, and we're going to get things done, it's just going to take time for us to get the new house, the new car, because we got to work and save our money and do all that stuff. Well, that's playing by the rules of Newtonian physics and three-dimensional reality. When you play by the rules of the quantum, in the quantum, there's an infinite amount of time. Now, time is eternal. Now, imagine if you had an infinite amount of time, how many things could you get done? Infinite number of things equal to your thoughts, right? And that's the quantum. So the quantum is time is eternal, and there's all possibilities exist in the present moment in the quantum. So in three-dimensional reality, Newtonian physics, it's about the predictable. The quantum is immaterial. Nothing's local yet in space and time. All possibilities exist as frequency, as energy, as vibration, as information, as consciousness in the realm of thought. So in the quantum, anything is possible. And it's no different than looking in a dressing room where there's mirrors this way and mirrors this way, and you see an infinite number of views. There's an infinite number of possible realities where one small thing is changed. Just one small thing. You shaved with your left hand today, that now you're in a different reality. You did your meditation, you connected, you come back, you just moved out of that dressing room, and now you're in a dressing room that looks just like that, but something's different. Your wife still looks the same, everybody looks the same, but all of a sudden, here's that phone call, here's that email, here's that opportunity. Now I'm in a whole new dimension, right? So in that quantum realm then, because it's non-local, we have to actually create not with our bodies. We have to dissociate from our bodies. We can't enter the quantum field as a somebody. We have to enter as a nobody. So teaching people how to pass through the eye of the needle is that moment they become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, no time. That's the moment they're pure consciousness. Now, teaching people how to create from the field instead of from matter has taken me many, many years. Yeah. But now people that are doing it are seeing those kind of instantaneous changes taking place, because when they begin to change their energy, and all potentials in the quantum field exist as electromagnetic potentials, and thoughts are the electrical charge and feelings are the magnetic charge, and how you think and how you feel is broadcasting information on a daily basis. So when a person changes their thoughts and feelings and they're creating from the field, when there's a vibrational match between their energy and that potential in the quantum field, and they're creating connected to the source, and that source energy is actually connecting everything material, they no longer have to go anywhere and get it. In fact, now they're actually going to collapse time and space, or the experience is going to be drawn to them. Now they're the magnet. That's when they start drawing experiences to them. Now they're not going anywhere to get them. Now they're coming to them. That's when it gets fun.
Everything that we can imagine, if we can imagine it, it's possible. And that's really, really powerful and something to wrap our minds around. But something specifically in breaking the habit of being yourself that you said, because I did a show talking about the science of gratitude, but something you said just stuck out and I wish that I'd known this before. So in the book, you state that when you express gratitude for something that hasn't happened yet, quote, you are moving from cause and effect, waiting for something outside of you to make a change inside of you, to causing an effect. So you're moving from cause and effect to causing an effect, changing something inside of you to produce an effect outside of you, right? So let's talk about how gratitude plays into this, because I think this is very practical.
Yeah. Well, this took me a long time, Shawn, to figure out, because I think that when people say that they want a new job or they want a new relationship or they want to be healthy, they're actually waiting for their health to improve to feel gratitude.
Right.
They're waiting for their new relationship to feel joy and gratitude and thankfulness. They're waiting for the new career to happen. And once it happens, then they celebrate and feel gratitude. Well, if you believe that your thoughts and feelings produce an effect in your life and you're living in the lack every single day waiting for it to happen, you're separate from the experience, right? So if you think about the emotional signature of gratitude, when you are receiving something that you like, that's pleasurable, you've just gotten or received something that is pleasurable, something just happened to you, or something's happening to you that you like, you say thank you, you feel gratitude. So the emotional signature of gratitude is that something has already happened. And it is the absolute perfect state of receiving. It is the absolute state of receivership. So here's an example. A person gets a diagnosis. The diagnosis is something like cancer. The first moment they hear that word, they feel fear. They feel a change in their internal state, and they pay attention to what the doctor says. They take a snapshot, and they create that memory. They remember the moment the doctor said that. So now they're in fear. They're scared, and they're going to think positively, or they'll say, I'm going to beat this thing. Well, if they're feeling fear, they can only accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to their emotional state. That fear thoughts will be the only ones that will make it in there. Now, if the person changes fear to gratitude, as an example, and they really start training their heart, we can measure when a person feels gratitude, what happens to their heart. The heart gets regulated. It starts beating more coherently. It starts increasing energy to the brain. It starts creating an ambient field around the body. This is when your heart starts working for you. That when a person starts feeling gratitude, then the emotional signature in the body is that something's happening to them, or something's just happened to them. So if you're in a state of gratitude, you're in a state of receiving, then the thoughts that you think will make it to the body and program the autonomic nervous system into a different destiny. So just in 4 days, we found that when people, 10 minutes a day, for 4 days, traded anger, frustration, fear, all those limited emotions for gratitude, that their immune system improved by 50%. They made immunoglobulins that made their body stronger. Now if a pharmaceutical company had a drug that could strengthen immunoglobulin A in your body, it would be on every television commercial during the news. And yet your nervous system is the greatest pharmacist there is. So then your body is objective. It's your unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between a real life experience that creates an emotion and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. So if your body is feeling gratitude, it's believing that something's happening to you. So in the beginning you go, well, I'm going to try gratitude. And then you think, well, this feels really weird. Why would I give gratitude until it happens? Well, because that's how you've been hypnotized. You've been programmed that way. But what if you change it around? The moment you feel gratitude, your healing begins. The moment you feel grateful for your life is going to change. Now you're causing an effect. So we have to embrace the emotion before it happens. Now, why? Well, let's just say you just did a great meditation and your heart is blown wide open and you feel grateful for life. Or you're connected to the emotions of your new career, your new job, your new life. If you're feeling the feeling that your new life has already happened, you wouldn't be looking for it any longer. You would be feeling like it's already happened. So you wouldn't look and be separate from it. You would feel connected to it. And then if you lost it and you started feeling angry because of traffic, I'd say, oh my God, you're back to the unconscious program again of allowing something outside of you to control your feelings and thoughts. You're back to that victimization program. So then when you start playing this game and you catch yourself and you self-correct and you get back into gratitude and feeling it, then your body is no longer preoccupied of when it's going to happen or where it's going to happen. If you feel it, it feels like it's already happened. So that's the moment you're no longer separate from it. That's the moment you start drawing or magnetizing experiences to you.
It's not just the thought of gratitude, it's feeling.
You got to make it visceral.
Yeah.
And we actually use HRV monitors. We put heart rate monitors on people. We study them for 24 hours. We want to know if they're actually doing it. And we have great results. People could actually sustain that state for over 45 minutes. It's just a skill. Now, why is that important? Because in their life, they should be able to do it with their eyes open. That's the game, right?
Yeah.
Practice with your eyes closed because you don't want to be distracted.
Right.
Get good at it. Stand in line, sit in traffic, listen to your best friend complain, and you stay in gratitude. You're doing something really well. You're self-regulating.
Yeah.
So much of our attention's on our outer environment, and we want to put a little bit more attention on our inner environment, and we want to create that coherence between the outer world and our inner world. That's when we start to master things.
Absolutely, yeah. We want to be able to mediate our emotions, because I think it's so easy, again, to get trapped in those old patterns if you don't catch it. And like, you can decide how you want to feel in that moment rather than being just a victim to circumstance.
There you go. And listen, I react. We all react. Yeah. But the question is, how long are you going to react? Because those chemicals really last 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Yeah. After that, you're faking it. You're keeping it going.
Yeah.
So shortening the refractory period of your emotional reactions is really emotional intelligence. If you're going to teach your kids anything, teach them that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it'll turn out to be part of their personality. And they got to work really hard the rest of their life to not be angry or to have a short temper or to be impatient. And I think that people who self-regulate, who mediate in that way internally, are just generally happier people.
Yeah, absolutely. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
So in creating our reality and visualizing an outcome for ourselves, I think it's really important, like that crossing the river process. You say something in Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself that's so profound, and this is so important for people to get. You say that to change your reality, those outcomes that we attract to ourselves have to surprise and even astonish us in a way in which they come about.
Yeah. This is the fun part about life. Most people are expecting the worst thing to happen to them. They're bracing themselves for whatever it is around the corner that's going to go wrong, because in survival, if you prepare for the worst, you're going to survive, right? But if we're creating something new and unknown, creating a new thing in your life, it can't come in a way that you can predict or expect, because if you can predict it or expect it, it's the known. So then the moment you start trying to figure out how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, you got in the way. The universe just backs off and says, oh, hey, Shawn wants to do it. Go ahead. But when you are open to being astonished and surprised, and it comes in a way that you haven't expected, you wake up. You kind of wake up from the dream and you go, oh my God, it happened. And then you will look back at your entire past and you will want to change one thing in your past. We see this all the time because it brought you to the present moment. That's the moment the past no longer exists. So the surprise, the brain learns by mistakes and surprises. Which would you like a few of? How about some surprises? So when it comes in a way that's just like out of nowhere, that you haven't thought of, and it's your creation, and you're surprised, you're not unconscious any longer. You're more conscious, you're more awake, you're awakened, and you're starting to believe, oh my God, I'm the creator of my life. I'm not the victim of my life. I actually did that. And now you take your foot off the gas and you trust a little bit more that things are going to organize in a way that's right for you. That's a divine aspect in us starting to happen instead of that animal aspect. And so we have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to occur. And that is the greatest habit we have to break, because we got to stay out of the way.
Love that so much. I do. That's really profound. Just going through this process and For me, this moment of decision was 2002. What the bleep showed up in my radar, I think it was like 2005, somewhere around there. And it was just affirming some of the things that I was experiencing, and I never heard it spoken outside of like what was going on in my head. I knew that so many things in my reality were changing, but the ways that they were happening were very unexpected. I had an intention about what I wanted, but the way they were coming about was not up to me in a sense, because we can labor and try to make this outcome happen in the way that we think.
Yeah.
But you're saying to allow some space so that this greater thing that we're connected to, that we can't really explain.
There's room for the unknown.
Yes.
Just gotta make room.
It reminds us that we're that powerful to affect those outcomes, but we need something to remind us.
Well, here's the deal. It's a habit. If you're creating matter to matter and you're living in stress and survival, the chemicals of stress actually heighten your senses and we become materialists. So then when we're matter trying to change matter, we're always trying to force the outcome, trying to control the outcome, we're trying to predict the outcome, we're in the way. That's because you're experiencing separation. So you try harder, you fight for it, you compete, you manipulate. You do everything you can because you got limited resources, matter to matter. So then when you create from the field instead of from matter, and you feel connected to your vision, and you understand that when your heart is open, your heart is actually drawing the experience to you. Now think about this. If you understood that on a gut level, where would you rush to? There would be no place to rush to. You would never leave the present moment. You would just tune in and draw things to you. That's a much healthier way to live, right? So we force outcomes and we control outcomes because we're in the program of thinking that we're separate. But if you're feeling like your dream has already happened, then you wouldn't be forcing anything. You'd be relaxed in the present moment because the emotion of your future keeps you in the present moment. And so, it's not something you do in one swing. You got to practice a lot. You got to stay conscious. It's trial and error. But I tell you what, it's always worth the effort because when it finally happens, you don't even care that it happened any longer because you're so happy with yourself that you're no longer controlling. And the moment you just let go is the moment it always shows up. And that's the surprise, like, wow, I did it, or here it is. And then that energy, that surprise or the synchronicity helps us with the next creation. We can use that energy. And wow, I'm thrilled, I'm juiced, I'm in awe, I'm in love, I'm inspired, I'm grateful. Hey, you sit down to create the next day, it's a little easier. And wow, there's even more miracles happen. Oh, well, let's keep it going. Who wants to stop that, right? That's when it gets kind of fun. So the synchronicities and surprises, that is the unknown. But the unknown isn't going to be something scary like we're used to. It's going to be something thrilling. It's really ecstatic, something that's going to wake us up. That's what we want.
Well, let's come down to a fact of science so we get this clear. Less than 1% of disease is connected to genes. So I say, where the hell is all the disease coming from? And it goes, it's coming from stress. And I say, what's stress? Now, this is really important because stress is anything that gets in the way of your destination. I want to have this, I want to go there, whatever, and then something gets in the way, that, provokes stress. And I go, so why is it relevant? Because stress is the cause of disease of 90% of the people. And I say, why is that relevant? Again, that's not genetic, that's a perception. I am stressed because I believe I'm stressed, and therefore my cells are going to respond to my stress, whether it's real or not. The cells can't see it. They only are based on what I believe. So stress interferes with the immune system. Let's do stress right now because the whole world's in a stress situation. So let me give you the 3 fundamental things that happen when you're in stress. Why do we recognize stress for? And I go, because we're being threatened. That's what stress means. Something's threatening you. Let's go back, thousands of years. And I say, what was the stress? I say, saber-toothed tiger. I go, oh, okay. I say, well, what happens when the saber-toothed tiger is chasing you? I say, you got to run like hell. I say, well, what organs in your body do you use to deal with stress? I go, arms and legs. Escape. So I say, now here comes the next point. If I'm going to need those organs to escape from the tiger, then here's the most important thing. I need to give them energy. because without energy, the muscles aren't going to work. So I say, what provides energy? I say, blood. So I go, oh, why is it relevant? Now here it comes. When I perceive a stress hormones function is to provide as much blood to my arms and legs as I can get because I need all of that energy to run away from the tiger. So I say, well, where's it getting the blood from? I said, well, the heart's pumping the blood. Yeah, but it's pumping it all over the body. So I say, well, when the blood is in my gut, what is the function of the organs? Lungs, gut, all those organs in there. I say, maintenance of the body, health of the body, fixing the body, and all that. And I say, well, if you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, do you think it's good to invest in taking care of your body at this point? I go, what a waste of time. If the tiger catches you, the hell with the body, it's not going to exist anyway. So here's number one. When stress is perceived, stress hormones released into the body cause the blood vessels in the gut to squeeze shut. I go, why? Because when they squeeze shut, the blood is pushed to the outside, arms and legs, okay? So I say, yeah, but net consequence? You shut down the blood vessels in the gut and you shut down the maintenance and health of the body. I say, yeah, but for how long? How long does it take to get away from that tiger? 10 minutes? 15 minutes? You're away from the tiger, stress is gone, everything's back in condition again. People can experience this when you get that stress moment. It's like, they call it butterflies in the stomach. They feel like a queasy. I said, what's the queasy? It's the blood vessels squeezing shut. You can feel them. It's like fluttering. Okay, so number one, stress shuts down blood flow to the gut because it's going to make sure the blood goes preferentially to the arms and legs. Number two, and this is critical now, the immune system uses tremendous amount of energy. Most people, when they get really sick, don't even have the energy to get out of bed. So I say, well, let's say I have a bacterial infection and a saber-toothed tiger is chasing me. How should I split my energy? Again, the hell with a bacterial infection. If the tiger, the saber-toothed tiger catches you, the infection doesn't mean anything anymore. It's the tiger's problem. So I go, okay. So what does it mean? Fact. Stress hormones shut off the immune system to conserve energy to run away from the tiger. Okay? And I go, wow, so stress hormones shut it down. I go, so much so, listen, medical doctors use stress hormones therapeutically, meaning if they want to transplant an organ from person A into person B, and you put that organ in, the foreign organ, into the recipient, the immune system of the recipient is going to say, that's foreign, and try and destroy it. And I say, well, what good is the operation if I just take the organ and put it into somebody else and the immune system messes with it? And I go, this is why medical doctors give patients are going to receive a transplant. They give them stress hormones because when they give them the stress hormones and then do the transplant, the recipient's immune system is not going to be working and it will sustain the transplant. How effective of shutting off the immune system? It's used therapeutically to shut off the immune system. Okay, so that's number two. We compromise growth and health. We shut down the immune system. I call the third consequence adding insult to injury. And I go, what do you mean? Well, the brain has, in the forebrain, this is conscious part of the brain. And in the conscious part of the brain, that's creative. Okay? And I go, that's great. And I say, what about the hindbrain? I go, the hindbrain is reflex reaction. And I go, if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, do you want to have consciousness running the show or do you want to just have reflex reaction carry you away? And the answer is consciousness is too slow. I always say, you're in a car spinning. It just starts to get out of control. I say, if you stay in the conscious mind when that car's going out of control, here's my model. All you're going to do is you're going to just get lost. I say, the moment the car goes out of control, guess what? Stress hormones shut off that immune system, push the blood. When I squeeze the blood vessels in the forebrain, it pushes the blood to the hindbrain where reflexes are going to work. I say, what? I go, we become less intelligent when we're under stress because consciousness is too slow. And when you're running, so I go, so what's the issue? Historically, the stress response was to be used for a short period of time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You escape the tiger, no more stress. And I go, and what about today? And I go, got a little problem here. 24/7, 365 stress. The system was not designed for that. And this excess stress is responsible for up to 90% of disease on this planet, not genes. Genes, less than 1%. And all of a sudden I say, why is this important? Because if you tell somebody genes cause that, then that gives them, oh, I'm not responsible. The genes did it. I go, no, because if you feel you're not responsible, you shut off your control. And that's the point. I am in control. Let me give you an example about the difference between growth and protection, because that's what it comes down to. A stimulus provokes us to do something. If it's a good stimulus, you move to it, like love, food, something you want. That's a stimulus. We move to that stimulus. And then I say, but when you move to it, you go open armed. Why? I want to take it in. If it's love, I don't want to close myself down. I want to assimilate it. If it's food, I got to open myself up, take it in. So growth means you go to the stimulus open, okay? But what if the stimulus is negative, a threat of any kind? I go, oh, I don't go to the stimulus. I go away from the stimulus. Do I go away, my arms open? I go, no. You close yourself down because of protection. So I say, so what's the difference? Growth, go to a stimulus, arms open. Protection, go away from the stimulus, arms closed. I say, why is it relevant? And here's a simple conclusion. You can't move forwards and backwards at the same time. You can't be open and closed at the same time. So basically it says, if you're in a stress mode, you've shut your system down and growth shut down, and that's okay for a very short period. But if it's chronic, you've killed yourself, essentially. And I say, so why is it relevant? I go, look at today's world. Every time you turn on TV, be afraid, be very afraid, go hide in your house. And I go, wow, that's as scary as hell. I say, why is it relevant? I am getting stress hormones dripping into my system every time I watch that damn TV. I'm getting stress hormones when I read a paper, go and surf the internet. And I go, and what is that doing for you? And I say, it is compromising your health. I go, oh. I say, that's where disease comes from. Not from the genes, but you shut yourself down. And then, as I said, you become less intelligent. Then what do? Defer to the boss. Who's the one that's going to protect me? Whatever they say, I'm going to do. Why? I'm not thinking. I'm just going to do what they say because they know I don't know. I go, oh my God, have we just screwed the world big time? I go, why? Because the planet is on 24/7 stress all over the planet. It's like you have been manipulated by a belief system, and then belief controls genetics, and belief controls your biology. And if you start with a negative belief, you only end up with a negative biology. It's the only way it happens. And for a fact, because people don't get it, and I need to give it, what is a fact? A truism. And here's what's number one fact. Quantum physics is the most valid science on this planet. It's the one that's been tested the most and verified to be more truthful than any other science. I go, so what? Because what's the first principle of quantum physics? The mind is the creator of our life experiences. And it says your consciousness is creating your life. I go, why is that relevant? Because if you change your consciousness, you can change your life. It's like you don't have to wait for life to change from the outside. It's you on the inside. And so we have been systematically disempowered. And if you've been disempowered, then where the hell's the power going? 1%. That's the 1%. They got all the money. Money is power because money is the equivalent of energy. And energy is life. Everybody, energy is life. Yeah, I know that. Money is energy. You have a lot of money, you're going to have a lot of life. You got no money, you're already compromised at this point. So the simple reality is we have been systematically disempowered by belief systems that are no longer valid. Genetics, that science is not as valid as epigenetics. The difference, genetics victim, epigenetics master. So if you don't know epigenetics, you have lost your control and you bought into, oh my God, there's a cancer running in my family and I'm going to get a cancer gene. Little pause here, Shawn. There is no gene that causes cancer. There's not one gene that causes cancer. Give you an example. Women will undergo a mutilation, which they gently refer to as a double mastectomy. That sounds much better. Don't mutilate yourself. Oh, I'm just having a, mastectomy. Okay, no, that's called mutilation. You're cutting your body apart. I go, for what reason? Well, I found out I have the breast cancer gene and I don't want breast cancer. And I go, okay, let me give you a little fact that you haven't paid attention to. 50% of the women with breast cancer gene never get breast cancer. This is a very important point. The possession of the gene itself doesn't cause cancer. It's a life not in harmony that engages that gene. And this is how people can have a remission, because they realize, oh my God, my life's not, it's not working well. I'm so stressed and blah, blah, blah. And I got this cancer, and they say, I'm going to let go of my stress. Cancer goes into remission. The problem with the conventional person is, I got cancer and it's got stupid genes and my cells are stupid. My cells are going to kill me. So if I kill the cells and I cut out the cancer, I'm going to be okay. And I go, no, the cancer is a symptom of you not living in harmony. And therefore, cutting out the cancer, you just get another cancer if you don't change the stress. And it's the ones that realize my life is not in harmony and change that are the ones that have the remission. So the point is this: did the gene cause cancer? And the answer is absolutely not. There is no gene that causes cancer. There are genes that are correlated with cancer. In other words, it's a symptom. And so I say, cutting out the cancer cells, thinking you've healed everything, is the same as covering up the service engine light on the dashboard when it shows up driving the car. If I cover it up, it's like, oh, hey, everything's running good. The service light's not even on anymore. And I go, you didn't fix anything. You just shut off the symptom. And this is where we have to go, because every bit of this is a disempowerment to the individual by saying you're frail, you're vulnerable. And Shawn, while we talk about belief, I just need to emphasize, when we talk about belief, and this, does belief control our biology? I go, well, nearly 75 years or more, we've understood the nature of what is called the placebo effect. The placebo effect is someone's got an illness. The doctor says, I got this new pill. It's the greatest new medicine in the history of anything. Take this pill. And the person says, oh, wow, finally a cure. They take the pill, they get better, find out the pill was a sugar pill. I go, and what the hell healed them? The answer was their belief in the pill, not the pill, the belief in the pill. I go, oh, that's called placebo. I go, yeah, that's positive belief. That's what it is, positive. And then I go, yeah, everybody goes, yeah, placebo effect, positive belief. And I go, negative belief, which no one talks about, is equally powerful to positive belief in affecting your life, but in the opposite direction. Placebo can cure me of any illness on this planet. Nocebo, negative belief, can cause any illness and even death. If you believe you're going to die, you can die just from the belief of that. I say, so why is it relevant? Because the percentage of negative belief versus positive belief is so upside down. We have more negative beliefs in our world than positive belief. And so, again, when you have a negative belief, you don't realize that negative belief has opened you up to manifest whatever you're afraid of. And that's the problem.
So right now, if we can have something that we can do, because everybody listening wants this to get turned around. And is there anything we can do right now to help to usher in more health and unity when we need it so much? And I'm going to preface by saying that I learned this from you. Each of our cells have these antennas, basically. We're literally interacting and receiving data from our environment. And we can, and also we can affect that environment as well. So I'm going to preface by saying that, and then ask what your opinion is that we can do right now.
Yeah, well, as you just said, so very quickly we can understand this, is we know about computers and silicon chips and all that stuff. A cell is a carbon-based organic computer. The cell membrane is a chip. It's not like a chip. It is a chip. It's got inputs and outputs, and it adjusts the cell to what's going on in the world. And if the world's not in support, then you have to change your biology to survive. And so the cells are reading the environment and trying to adjust, well, as I said, the cells in your body are reading your perception of the environment. You want to change your health, you have to change your perception. You have to stop saying, I am weak and vulnerable. I am not weak and vulnerable. I'm a powerful son of a gun. And the reality is, how am I going to be powerful? I say, you got to take care of your health. Your health is what manifests your life. If you compromise your health, you compromise your life. And we've all been compromised by programming when we were young. Like, we gave up control of the power of our life when we were young because we were programmed to believe that the doctor knows about health. And who are we? We don't know nothing. So if the doctor says X, Y, or Z, that becomes our truth. And this is what the problem with diagnoses are. Because the diagnosis says, oh, well, you're going to have this, and then the prognosis, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And I go, if you own the truth that the doctor is the source of truth, then that prognosis is actually a script for your future. And you will manifest all of those things because that's what you believe. So it's a time to say, let's question what we believe, because the beliefs that we have are creating the situation. So to me, this is most important, that we must recognize we are so powerful. And that's like, oh, that's a new age. And I go, that's not new age. That's quantum physics and epigenetics, because they both say the same thing. Quantum physics says your consciousness is creating your life experience. And epigenetics is a science says your consciousness is controlling your genetics. Both of them saying the same thing. I don't need to change my genetics. I need to change my consciousness.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
What you're taught in schools and by your parents are facts. And facts are context dependent. They're not true all the time, but people don't realize that. So, an example, how much is 1 + 1?